Good afternoon, everybody. Today, I have to come to you as a fellow Catholic educator. And I am so delighted and grateful to be able to have this time together with you. It is truly a privilege for me to be able to reaffirm to each other our true vocation. We are the messengers of the good news. The last few days has been extremely powerful moments for me, because as you know that I exited this field of education 2 years ago, and today, this week, has been the first convention of teachers that I am able to attend after my retirement, and it brought back a lot of memories. For those of you who have had time and a chance to reflect on the years of education, the years of service, I am sure, like me, you would proudly see and savor the growth and the transformation of our academic, professional, and spiritual lives. I often smile in thanksgiving and in renewed faith when I revisit those days, trying to construct those perfect and complicated lesson plans that often have to be changed or rewritten so that it could fit into a normal working day at school. And after school hours and the weekend, you remember, we're busy with marking papers. And the individuals who were in our classroom were then our students, to whom we share our academic knowledge. And at the end of each day, at the end of each week, I don't know about you, but I used to breathe a sigh of relief. Thank God I didn't forget my yard duty. Or to bring my daybook to school. And happily those days soon became more exciting moments of a more promising career. We then had more time to read up, to attend workshops like today, or to improve in our teaching strategies. We look forward to workshops and to meeting our colleagues, to pilot new programs. And the individuals who were in our classroom, not only were the one we share academic knowledge to, but we share our faith, spiritual values, and much, much more. Then came summer holidays. Summer holidays, a period often of quiet time to re-energize, and a time of preparation for the following year, full of promises and ready to put into practice new knowledge. And often during those very restful summer afternoons, as we pause to take in all that summer beauty, those were the sacred moments very often when pictures of gratitude of our children, our students, images of their tears of joys and gratitude, images of their hugs, of their look full of wonder and excitement. Those pictures flash back in our memories, and we pause to think that despite all the difficulty, despite all the sufferings and pain, it was all worth it. And from that moment on, no matter where we were in our career, what season it was, we knew that all of those lives we carried with them, lives that are so individually different, fraught with danger, but full filled with potential for goodness. And during those sacred moments, we pause in reverence and in thanksgiving, and we ponder and reflect on the words of the prophet Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has sent me out to proclaim the good news. He has sent me on a mission of love, to proclaim freedom to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind. My dear colleagues, very similar to our transformation and our growth in our professional life, my late brother François-Xavier Nguyen also experienced the same transformation, the same growth in his vocation as a priest, as a bishop, a cardinal, but above all as a prisoner who became a messenger of hope in prison. A prisoner whom inmates and prison guards, all included, regarded as their beloved teacher. François-Xavier was born in Hue, a central part of Vietnam, in 1928, and he felt the calling to priesthood at an early age. He joined the minor seminary at the age of 13, and at the age of 39, he was ordained Bishop of Nha Trang, a coastal city of Vietnam. In 1967, at the peak of Vietnam War, Francis was ordained Bishop of Nha Trang, and there in that diocese, he put all his effort, devoted most of his energy in the spiritual renewal of the laity and the lay movements, because he knew that the time had come, that the laity and the lay movement will help or even replace the clergy to continue to proclaim the good news, because he knew then that clergy like him would end up in jail. And in 1975, just a few months before Vietnam fell completely in the communist regime from north to south, Pope Paul VI appointed him as coadjutor Archbishop of Ho Chi Minh City. But the government of the communist regime flatly denied and refused that decision of Vatican, because they said that Vatican needed their approval. And so they asked Francis to leave Saigon, but believing in his vow of obedience to the church, he remained in Ho Chi Minh City, and he was arrested on 15th of August 1975 on the feast of Our Lady, Assumption Our Lady. And from that moment on, he started his journey as a prisoner for 13 years. But if you ask him about that period, he would always smile and look at you, and he would say, you know, it was a period of purification. It was a time when I realized about the true meaning of evangelization, and that I was able to practice, to live my vocation in a radical way. So Francis was first put in house arrest in a little house close to a little church in Nha Trang, near his bishop residence. And like any normal human being, he started to feel extremely angry, and he even had that moment of revolt against God. He even dared to question God. You know, what are you doing to me? I am in the midst of preparing everything for you. All my projects are going smoothly to serve you, Lord. What are you doing to my life? How am I going to shepherd my faithful? But God, in His mercy, saw that struggle and saw that desire to continue to shepherd His faithful. So Francis recalled that one night, in the midst of his anguish, he felt as if Jesus was speaking to him. Francis, why are you being so foolish? You must distinguish between God and the works of God. Everything that you've been doing for me is very beautiful, but I, as a God, I could select somebody else to do for you, and it may be better than you. For you, at this time, I desire that you belong totally to me, and your job is to belong to your God and not to the projects of God. Do like St. Paul. When St. Paul was in prison, he continued to teach his faithful by writing. And that night, my late brother felt at peace. And he renewed his commitment to belong to God. The following few days, when the guards were not around, because in house arrest you are constantly watched and supervised by the communist police agents. So when the guards were not around, he signaled a little boy who went to church early in the morning. And he asked the boy, you know, when you go home today, ask your parents if they could possibly provide me with some old calendar leaves and a few pencils. And under that bush, just leave them there and I will retrieve them at night. The following day, the boy came. He became the stationery supplier for Francis. And this is how Francis was able to write 1001 meditations. The family of the boy was able to reconcile by hand, and from family to family, those meditations were able to travel with the boat people, travel with the people in the education camp and in the prisons. And that's how they were able, and he was able to stay in communication with his faithful. Those meditations finally arrived in Sydney, Australia, where my family was able to find one translator to put those meditations in English. And today, the book is called The Gospel from Prison, The Road of Hope. That some of you may be able to see that in some Catholic bookstore. It is now translated in 20 languages, including Arabic. And thanks to that little boy's help and his family. But by the time the communist regime knew about this book, they removed Francis from the house arrest into an isolation cell, and that is where he had to endure very harsh tortures and treatment. When the Caritas organization and the Amnesty International and the Human Rights Organization knew about his condition, they were able to ask, and he was able to, with their assistance, be removed from that condition and moved into the education camp. And before the trip, most prisoners were able to ask for personal items such as toothbrush or some warm clothing or some rubber boots to be able to work in the labor camp. Francis was sent out a note for the family. Could you please send me some medicine for stomach? And the family knew right away what he meant. So we took a bottle, an old bottle of stomach medicine, and we put in there on the wine. And the host, unconsecrated host, were hidden in a flashlight. And the officer called him over and said, Mr. Tuan, do you have stomach ailment? Yes. So here it is. This is your medication that your family sent to you. And it is in that way that he was able to continue the ministry of Jesus and to be able to celebrate the Eucharist in prison and offer and strengthen the life of the inmates with the body of Christ, the body and the blood of Christ in prison and in re-education camp. So on November 29, 1976, on the first Sunday of Advent, a boat in the direction of North Vietnam carried more than 1,700 prisoners going north part of North Vietnam, the border of China. And they were chained 2 by 2, legs and arms. And Francis was chained with a man of Buddhist faith. And this man is still alive in South California, and he is now the head of a very big Buddhist branch in South California. And as you can imagine, being chained 2 by 2, they had to do everything together, from praying, washing your face, eating, sleeping. If you move, the other one had to move, and also bathroom activities. So it was a very difficult conditions, and often violent words were collide and emotions were flared. But with Jesus in the Eucharist, Francis really reaffirmed that it was the strength of Eucharist Jesus in the Eucharist that really gave them unity and fostered understanding and helped them that during that time when they were so connected to each other, not connected in very good conditions, but connected in these very difficult conditions, it was a time for them to treat it as an apostolic encounter. And you can imagine that all those inmates in prison, they belong to so many different walks of life. And some of them had scored to settle between them. He said that there were even some former businessmen who met up with their employees that they did not treat very fairly. So in prison, communion was a battle of each instant. Even one moment of neglect could shatter it. And it was the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist that was instrumental in building the unity, the place of darkness, and fostered understanding. After his exile in 1989, the media followed him everywhere to ask him, so what was the secret weapon that helped you remain sane and faithful to the church without renouncing anything during your 13 years of prison? And Francis' answer was always the same and very short: the Eucharist. And he shared with us in his book, Testimony of Hope. This is what he wrote. We even made little sacks from the paper from secret packages to preserve the most holy sacraments and bring it to others. The Eucharistic Jesus was always with me in my shirt pocket. Every week there was an indoctrination session in which the whole camp has to participate. And my Catholic companions and I took advantage of the breaks in order to pass the small sack to everyone, to the other group of prisoners. Everyone knew that Jesus was in their midst, and that was the secret weapon for him and for the females throughout those years of darkness. You see on the screen, those are the items that we use, not the cross, but the box. It's an old candy box containing 2 jars of tiger ball. And in those jars, he put the host so that they can circulate in prison. And the plastic spoon is to get the wine and put 3 drops of wine and 1 drop of water in the palm of his hand, and that's how he celebrated Mass, and the cloth, purified cloth. That box was the only piece of luggage that accompanied Francis out of Vietnam. I remember my sister went to Thailand International Airport in Bangkok to pick him up, and she couldn't recognize him because he was so thin and all. And so she saw this old man sitting with a hat rather too big for him. And she came over and said, "Excuse me, is that all the passengers have left the luggage area?" And she realized that it was Francis. And so my sister Anne said, "Oh, Francis, is that you?" And he said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, let's go and get the luggage." And he said, "No, this is all I have." That box, that was his only luggage that accompanied him out of Vietnam. My colleagues, in writing these lines, I cannot help but think about our own life, our own professional life, with students and parents, support staff, and colleagues. There were days too in our professional life where communions also was very difficult to have. We each have a treasure chest filled with memories. Some memories are pictures of joy and laughter, but I am sure, like for myself, some of the memories in that treasure chest are also pictures of moments where it was difficult for us to keep and to make gentle our words. And on that boat, carrying all these prisoners due north, at 9:30 every night, all the prisoners have to go lie down on their mats and go to sleep and stop talking. And it is at that time that Francis would kneel down and celebrate quietly his Mass, and with his Buddhist companion to whom he was chained to, he was able to distribute the body of Christ to people around him who were Catholic, and those people will distribute the body of Christ to the people next to them. And this is how he recalled his experience. The second night in the calm of that December on the Pacific Ocean, I began to understand that a new stage of my vocation was beginning. I spent that 3-day journey studying my fellow prisoners and meditating on the Passion of Christ. I had organized various initiatives in the diocese for the evangelization of non-Christians, but now I seem to be following Jesus to the roots of evangelization. It was like going with him to die extramuros, outside the sacred walls. And Catholics in the prison of the camp, some of them had brought in a copy of the Bible, and so they would split it into different sections, and they would give it to the next camp and to recopy. And it was a very impressive experience to hear and to see those people declaring and proclaiming the good news with all the strength of their soul, and in that midst of darkness, torture, violence, and suffering. Also, during that time, there were more than 500 priests and religious men and women, all scattered into different camps and different prisons. And it was that time that the most significant and meaningful inter-religious and inter-cultural dialogues were going on. And we can see that in our profession as well, that in extraordinary, difficult, and sometimes humble ways and circumstances, it was then that it was a moment for evangelization. So every contact can be an apostolic encounter. During the period of isolation, one form of torture aiming to break the spirit of the prisoners was dehumanization. And Francis recounted the story of those days, and he said, we were most of the time fed with very, very salty meals, and so we were forced to drink. But if we didn't eat that, then there was nothing else to eat. So we had to drink. So after we drink, you know that you need to go to the bathroom. But the prison guards would not return days for days to allow you to relieve yourself. So you were forced to dirty your little cells. And the prison guard that was assigned to Francis was a female guard. And she would come in and she would abuse him with violence and comment. You are a bishop, you call yourself a bishop, and you live like an animal, you are so dirty. And days after days, he said it was very difficult to really be faithful to the gospel, to love your neighbor. But God knew our desire and our struggle. And he said one day, he summoned all his courage to stand up in that dirtiness and nakedness, to look at the prison guard and said to her, Lady, I apologize for my condition and for giving you this dirty job to clean my cell and for holding me down. I know that you don't hate me personally. I know that between you and me there is nothing personal. We both belong to the same nation. And I fully understand that you have to execute your job. So for that, I ask you to excuse my condition. The lady, her attitude changed completely, he said, from that moment on. It was a brief moment, but it was the beginning of a dialogue, a human dialogue, a dialogue filled with hope in understanding, a dialogue asking for understanding. And it was for him, that moment was the beginning of the announcement of the gospel of love and forgiveness. Friends, in our lives with children and parents and with colleagues, how often in our daily encounters we were reminded also that forgiveness and love really mark the beginning of the announcement of the gospel. And Francis spoke of the radicality of the gospel in the following words. He said, making ourselves one with everyone and having the courage to regard every human person, including those who seem most contemptible or hostile, as neighbor, brother or sister, mom or dad, husband or wife, student or parent or colleague. It is then that we practice the central content of salvation. For this reason, evangelization is not a task only entrusted to missionaries of the clergy. It is the essential element of our Christian life. The good news of God, who is close and can be only manifested if we make ourselves close to our students and to everyone. He was freed and exiled from Vietnam in 1989. He was elevated to college to Cardinal in 2001 and became president of the Pontifical Council of Justice and Peace and died in 2002. Last October, the diocese opened his cause for beatification, and on that happy occasion, his former prison guards defied all difficulties to come out to testify to the friendship that they shared with him in prison. And one of them spoke to the press when the press asked him, so tell us how it was in prison with Tuan. And one of them, who guarded him in the last two years of his prison life, he said, I understood that Mr. Tuan truly believed that his Jesus is in his neighbor. Why? I know that because of the respect and genuine concern that he has for us who were his enemies. He was my teacher, Mr. Tuan, a teacher who gave me knowledge and also wisdom and love to use my knowledge. He said, I love the song that he taught me, Veni Creator, more than any other songs. And that song often filled his eyes with tears of joy. Like the late Cardinal, all of us, each one of us has a journey to travel. And on that journey, many pilgrims under our care. We are promised, like him, joy and success. But my friends, like him, we are also promised abandonment, moment of doubts, sacrifice, and sufferings. But these comforting words will always remain with us. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has sent me out on a mission of love. And he will remain with me until the end of the world. I wish each and every one of you God's blessing and a very joyful year. May the Lord remain with us, and may he continue to use us, and may he continue to love us as much as he could possibly, because we need his love to be able to serve and love the little ones that are in our care. How shall they see the face of God if we don't show to them? As we celebrate in complete freedom and peace our convention and our Catholic faith, let us remember all our colleagues across the oceans, and especially the ones who have to risk their lives each day to teach the gospel, to bring the gospel, and to bring Christ to others. I thank you for being here with me and for giving me your unity. Thank you.